Okay, hey everybody. Please
Mark,
come take a seat. I'm good. Thank you for asking. Very good. Hey guys. Welcome to my home. My name is Dr. Mark Hatala, and today we're going to talk about the Sapir-Whorf Hypothesis, which is how language influences thought. But I thought we could start with introductions of everybody. Start down here.
I'm Maddy.
I'm Annie.
I'm Zach.
I'm Will.
And I'm Ashley.
Outstanding. So what the Sapir-Whorf Hypothesis, where it comes from, Benjamin Whorf was a linguist, and he was studying the Hopi people. And what he believed, they didn't have terms for things like past and future. So he originally believed that they were incapable of thinking in terms of the past and future in their language. And so what this is, that's the strong Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. There's also a weak version that says that language influences thought rather than determines thought. And because I don't believe any of us are from the Hopi culture, but we are Americans, and so I thought what we could use as a very brief example of this is money is a big part of American culture, which you may or may not have realized. And so if we could come up, well, what people usually talk about is, or an example I use in class is, if we had to come up with terms for hands, what's another term for hands?
Models.
I don't know, yeah. But if we were doing this in terms of private parts, we could probably come up with a number of different slang terms for that. And so that language influences thought. But let's do money instead. And I will start by saying cheddar. Let's go around
You
this
stole
way.
mine. Alright, cash.
Dough. Gold.
Coins.
Bread.
Dead presidents.
Oh, we're so. Gosh, I don't know, cash money.
We'll keep going. Ashley, what do you got?
Escape me. I'm out. He took.
You're out. Okay, we have two people out.
Oh,
Green.
Damn.
Oh.
Paper.
Red.
Lettuce.
oh.
Or back to Maddy.
I'm looking paper.
We'll stop there.
What about like chips?
Chips? No, there's like an infinite. I've done this in a class of 30 people, and we're able to go around and do it.
I guess we're just not too money focused here.
That's because we are, yes.
Enlightened.
Because we're all broke. Is really what it comes down to.
Just don't
So
think about
here's
it.
my question to our students assembled here is, do you think there's any validity to this? Do you think that language does impact thought? Or no? And so I'll throw it out there like that.
I talk a lot.
Go.
No, that's please, actually, go ahead.
Blow this up.
Okay, I really like this theory. I think
Mhm.
that it has a lot of truth to it. I think about it a lot from like a mental, emotional health standpoint, in the fact that like being able to articulate what your problem is makes it so that way it feels a little more real and like you can confront it in a better way.
Mhm.
Like I feel like when you don't know how to express how you feel because you don't have the vocabulary or the language for it, then it makes it not feel as real. Like I also think about that in terms of like, for me, like journaling or like talking to people and
Sure.
saying things out loud makes things real, you know? And when I don't have a word to describe what I'm trying to say, then it doesn't feel as real. I don't perceive it as well. And like, I feel like you can see like how it impacts it influences your perception of the world. Like, I don't know if you guys have had that feeling when like you learn a new vocab word and then suddenly the world is filled with this vocab word. Like you
Yes.
didn't notice it ever before, but now it's just everywhere.
Can I give a term for that? Because in my cognitive science class, one of the test questions is find a word an experience that can't be described in a word. And one of the things that we talk about is the German principle of Schadenfreude, which is the idea of finding happiness in another person's misery, which is uniquely German. But it makes you start seeing it everywhere. So I think you're absolutely right about that. Other thoughts? Actually, Zach, you were going to say something.
I thought better of it.
Okay, that's good too. But how do you feel about the theory in general?
When I first learned about it, and I don't want to base everything on intuition, but it didn't seem to me like it made intuitive sense. Maybe it did more so when it originated in the late 1800s, when the world was less connected and people of different cultures weren't everywhere. But it didn't. I don't know. I don't see that much evidence for it, at least in my daily life.
Well, one of the
framing it the wrong
criticisms, like Schadenfreude, is this idea that it's not like I'm incapable of thinking about that. I just didn't know that there was a word for it. So
I would agree with that.
Anytime.
I don't know if it hinders perception or thought so much to not have a word for something. Because you can say it in different ways. You can try to describe it and stuff. Maybe the reason you can't process it or know what you're feeling is because you genuinely don't know what you're feeling. Maybe you're just confused or something like that. But if you wanted to say you're terrified, you can just say you're very scared, even though you don't have that word. There's other things you can say, or
That's a very good point.
the German word you said, there's a translation for it that I'm sure you can say that exact same phrase in German, and it just the word is just shorter or something.
Sadism?
Yeah, sure, but
but they have other terms too, like Zeitgeist, which is spirit of the times, or Beobachtung, which is introspection.
yeah.
But Schadenfreude and Zeitgeist have become loan words to English. So even if
That's
we
true,
didn't
too.
have them before,
We
clearly
adapted
we were
them.
experiencing them in some way because we found the words useful.
That's true. Well, words like pajamas are the same kind of thing where we pick
chai.
up. Or chai tea, which is because I spoke Russian in college. It's chai is tea. You're calling it tea. Maddy, what are your thoughts about this?
Well, a lot of me supports the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, but an equal amount of me does not support it.
Okay, you're split on this one.
Yeah, well, because I'm a sociology minor, so we've actually studied this and talked about this in some of my classes, and it does make sense, in theory, to say if you don't have a word for it, that means that stuff doesn't really happen in your day-to-day environment. That you need a word for it, so therefore that concept doesn't really make sense to you. But also, you do kind of understand, if you were to go to a different society and learn that word, it then would make sense and you would have a case for it. So I'm torn because from place to place, from environment to environment, your language changes. So it just doesn't necessarily hold true to all environments.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know.
And this conversation hasn't convinced you one way or another yet.
No.
Okay, fair enough. Will, what do you think?
I'm also really mixed on it. I think kind of what Annie was going with, I do agree with, is sometimes you just can't necessarily describe something. I don't think that necessarily changes based on knowing certain things, but I do think that depending on how you speak can actually influence thought. I think interesting using the money aspect
Please.
as well. I think you hear something like cheddar,
Yeah.
I think it kind of has more of a connotation of almost playful, but also in more of a I don't know.
I like cheddar cheese too, and I like money. So there's two things that I like.
But I think so, and not getting into any sort of detail or anything, but I think a word you hear a lot, or a word that has a lot of meanings in college specifically, is sexual intercourse.
Sure.
The different words you have for that, and not to get into any kind of detail with that.
Maybe in the
But-
comments.
Yeah, but for instance, a word such as making love versus using the F word as a
Yes.
verb, I think definitely has two totally different meanings. And I think that's a word, like I said, especially in college, where you hear hooking up a lot. Or, you know, there's just so many different connotations of a word.
I don't know that that's properly defined, because I think that means different things to different people too.
Okay.
But,
Well,
oh, go ahead, please, Ashley. Now, I want to talk movies again, but
Oh.
yeah, but to that point, like I feel like I was introduced in high school to the word talking, like not as like we are talking right now, but as in like flirting with somebody. And like it
I've
being
never
like
heard it in that context.
really? Is it just me? Is it just my
It's
high
very
school?
popular.
Just
Like when
visit.
you say you're talking to someone, you're not like having a conversation.
No,
Okay.
you're flirting
having
with them. It's like
you're
it's like
texting
the
them.
flirting
Does it
thing.
mean
It's like
that, like, without
the
tone?
dating. It's like the dating before boyfriend and girlfriend. It's kind of like you're
Yeah.
like doing this little like cat and mouse
Just
thing.
just like getting to know each other, seeing if it wants to go further.
Testing the waters.
This
Well-
is getting off topic.
You're
Have
milking
you
the
heard
cow
that?
before you buy it.
The point.
Okay, so it's just the.
Well, I want to
Yeah,
ask
I've never heard
It's just
that.
the women.
Yeah.
Is Facebook official really a thing?
No,
Not
it's so
really.
stupid.
Okay, it's stupid. Please,
Well, 'cause
Ashley,
now
go
all the
ahead.
parents are on Facebook, so nobody posts.
Okay, fair enough.
Tip. But the point of bringing up that word is that I feel like for terms like that, they do change your behavior, if not your perception. Like in having another word for that, like that, I feel like for me was like, now I understand what everyone's doing now.
Uh-huh.
Now I understand what my options are. Like how to interact with people that I would potentially want to date. And like I feel like with terms like all the different terms for hooking up, like there are like levels to it, and like it gives you more options. So like when you're describing what's going on, you're not so like existential crisis about everything because you have a way to describe it. And I feel
Sure.
like that definitely changes how you perceive things, because then like you're not as upset and like scared by everything that comes on because you have a word for it.
So language is influencing thought. Interesting. The movie I want to bring up is the movie Arrival with
Amy Adams.
thank you, Amy Adams. It is the movie about the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis.
Fantastic.
Because I don't think I want to spoil the movie for anybody.
Are you sure?
But she has to learn to think in an entirely new way.
Plot.
by learning a new
Yeah,
language.
I don't think
Yeah.
that spoils it at all.
I'm also massively into retrocausality, and so it's about that too. Well, I would say leave your thoughts about the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis in the comments, and we would ask you to like and
Subscribe.
thank you and subscribe to our video. And otherwise, have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Not gonna lie, I was thinking about Arrival when I first was reading about that.
Yeah, that's why-
I was like, I wasn't gonna bring it up because